have a first level interview, which they usually say
Mm-hmm.
is technical,
Yeah.
and it's a second level interview, and they say, oh, you're meeting with someone strategic, and say, oh, is to look at cultural fit, right? And in 5-10 minutes or 30 minutes discussion, and they tell you whether you're a cultural fit or not. How do we align that? Because you want people to come into your organization to model your culture. As saying in this interview, you want to know if you're a cultural fit. What does that mean?
Honestly, I have a problem with that particular phrase because, for crying out loud, let's use practical examples now. So you can also create culture through and via storytelling. So I think it's something our forefathers used to like transmit culture from one generation to another. Leadership could also use storytelling to transmit culture from one generation to another, really. Because when you have new hires, it's good practice to tell them success stories about the organization, even failure stories. That actually helps build the kind of culture you want to see.
How does strategic leadership contribute to shaping this kind of corporate culture that we want?
Okay, just like I mentioned, first of all, it is the leader's responsibility to set the tone. So what do you want us to do? How do you want us to behave? You set the tone. You don't necessarily just have to say it. When you set the tone, you say it and then you behave it. So you are modeling it. You are showing people this is what the organization should look like. Now, learn from my example. Also, the leader also, has the responsibility of defining and aligning values. So it's not just enough to write out those things on the wall. What do they mean? Because sometimes we write out those values, they're so vague. We don't understand. You say teamwork. Okay. So
Hi everyone, welcome to Skillfully Spoken, your go-to destination where we discuss everything about talent management, from HR transformation to people and culture transformation, as it's now being called. Anything end-to-end talent management, we are here to discuss. We've been discussing on various things across our various podcasts, and today we have a new guest. Her name is Ijeoma Anyanwu. She's an expert in HR processes. She understands culture. She understands how we work across organizations. Today, our topic will be looking at culture is the company. We're looking at how we can build beliefs that stick. You're welcome, Ijeoma. And also with her is Uchechi, my very own partner here. Uchechi, you're also welcome.
Thank you.
So, here, Ijeoma, is it okay if I call you IJ? That's an abbreviation
okay.
of your name. So, IJ, can you tell us a bit about yourself? Thank you.
Well, I'm a little skeptical when you call me an expert in culture and processes, but I'll let that slide.
Okay.
Aspiring, so let me hang on to that one. Well, I have I started off. I didn't actually start off in HR. I started off in banking operations after studying sociology, and in the course of doing some little banking operations, I got fascinated with the way humans work, and that actually stirred up my interest for human processes in the organization. And so I went in to study human resource management, and after that, I transited into not-for-profit industry where I didn't go in as HR, but there was a gap for an HR person. So I filled in that gap while also acting as a project program manager officer in the not-for-profit. And from there, I transited into consulting as HR, and I've really done some parts of HR, including recruitment. I've done some policy implementations. I've also consulted a bit on attracting and retaining talent. So it's just a little bit of here and there. I'm actually aspiring to go deeper into processes, core HR processes. And basically that's where I am right now.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm still learning.
Okay, so great. So we'll take it from here. So what do you define as culture in modern day workplace? How have you seen this and what do you understand by it?
Okay, so if I give you the textbook definition of culture, I would say culture, organizational culture, company culture refers to shared values, refers to attitudes, standards, behaviors that characterize or make up organizations. And it shapes how employees interact, make decisions, work together, and influence basically everything about their daily routine and also about their long term strategic objectives and decisions. But a more simplified definition of culture would be something we learned even in primary school. It is the way people act. And so when you bring it into the organization, I would basically say it is a collection of behaviors and shared values that shape how people work in the organization, especially when no one is watching. So basically, that's how I look at culture.
So what you mentioned there is collection of shared value
Yes.
across the organization. So how is it created? How do people create this kind of culture?
Well, so but when I got this topic, I did a little research and I find that culture doesn't just happen. It actually starts from somewhere. And most times we find that when an organization is set up, it's the onus lies on the leadership to, like set out the structure on what we want to make this organization look like. So, first of all, culture is created through leadership, modeling what they actually want the organization to reflect. Also, it can also come in form of showing people. This is in organizations, we have values, you have value boards, so people write out what it is they want to see in the organizations in terms of values, and so it can start off that way. And then leaders also go a step forward by modeling what it is they want their culture to reflect. So if you are building a culture that says collaboration, teamwork, then it should reflect what the work you're doing should actually reflect teamwork and collaboration. If it's built around hard work, then what the leadership models should also be hard work. Then culture can also be created via I was saying, so you can also create culture through via storytelling. So I think it's something our forefathers used to, like transmit culture from one generation to another. Leadership could also use storytelling to transmit culture from one generation to another, really. Because when you have new hires, it's good practice to tell them stories about success stories about the organization, even failure stories. That actually helps build the kind of culture you want to see. Then culture should also be embedded in your hiring and onboarding practices. That also helps from day one to, let your employees know this is what we are building. We want you to understand so that you can also run with it. I think that those are some of the ways you can create culture in organizations.
So,
It's okay.
okay.
So it's funny when you have a first level interview, we usually say
Mm-hmm.
it's technical,
Yeah.
and it's second level interview, and they say, oh, you're meeting with someone strategic, and they say, oh, is to look at cultural fit, right? And in 5, 10 minutes or 30 minutes discussion, and they tell you whether you're a cultural fit or not. How do we align that? Because you want people to come into your organization to model your culture. As saying in this interview, you want to know if you're a cultural fit. What does that mean?
Honestly, I have a problem with that particular phrase because for crying out loud, let's use practical examples now.
Yeah.
I'm Nigerian, just like we are. We're in the UK, you're in Canada. I can't fit into your culture if I have not learned it. So, okay, then let me use Amazon now. I recently applied to Amazon for a job and fortunately I got in. There's something Amazon does. Before the interview, they give you a set of leadership principles. Get acquainted with them, look at them, see if it is something that
You
you
align
can
with.
naturally reflect. And then when they are interviewing you, they interview you based on these leadership principles. And you have time to, look, can I live around these principles? Now, if you are interviewing me based on that, from my questions, from my answers, from the things that I have done, I can, create answers, create
Align.
experience
Yeah.
and align to those leadership principles. But then you come out from nowhere and want me to be a cultural fit to your organization when I know practically, apart from what most people put on the website, which I can tell you is not really reflection of what is in the organizations. Now, when you do that, you're actually saying, are you willing to be a robot? Because that is basically what culture fit means. Come and be a robot, come and be like us. But the reality is that organizations don't need, they need people who will come in and share what they have. Yes, you will adapt when you stay with them for a while, you begin to learn, you begin to align with the culture. But then you also bring in your own ideas, which will fit into their own culture. So,
What you've just said now is very much strategic, and Uchechi just been shaking her head because she knows that somehow this sub is for her.
yeah,
But I'm
yeah,
not saying
No, it's not. It's
I've not
not.
said it's for her. No, but I've not said this sub is for her. So I don't need
yeah.
that to argue about. I'm not saying the sub is for her, but I'm just saying that
Mhm.
she knows because every time you hear it, this is cultural
Fit.
fit. It's cultural fit, and you sit down with someone.
So
And
let
that's
me
what
say
you tell
something
you.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
Mhm.
absolutely think that it's time for us to rethink culture fit.
Yeah,
I did a
it is.
write up on LinkedIn a
I
couple
think
of
I
weeks
saw
ago.
it. Hmm.
Did you say it? Yeah. I did a write up on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago about this.
Yeah.
And it was a question. And I said, I think, is it time for us to rethink culture fit?
Me too.
Because culture fit is not inclusive. Culture
Exactly.
mm,
fit is very, very exclusive.
true.
Hmm.
Culture fit, like I just said, is come be like us. Culture fit does not encourage individual contributions where this is the unique characteristics that I have, and this is
Yeah.
what I can add to your organization, and this is how it can translate
Exactly.
to building a richer culture. Culture grows, and
Yeah.
in that write up when I wrote it, what I was advocating for is a culture ad and not
Hmm.
culture.
Exactly.
Are there things that this person that you're interviewing or that is going through the process, are there things that they can potentially contribute to the existing culture of the organization? And it's also funny that IJ made that reference to storytelling and in the larger world of how culture is translated from generation to generation. And Udoka, I know I shared something with you, recently about something else that I'm working on, right? Around storytelling
Yeah. Okay.
and culture. But that's essentially how, in the African context, how we translate culture. And
Hmm.
if we took that and put it in the business world, it means that the fact that this started out, this is the beginning point, does not mean that this should be the ending point. It means that it should be progressive. It means that culture should shift when things shift.
Yeah.
And I absolutely agree that culture is driven top down.
True.
Otherwise, imagine in a family where parents are telling the kids, well, this is what we believe as a family, and you're telling them, oh, we're respectful, we're polite, but every day you scream at them, every day you disrespect them. And then you wonder why maybe the kids are not adapting to the culture or the values that you have posted around your house, or in this case, around the organization. You are not modeling it. So it's difficult for every other person in that organization to adapt to that culture. So I absolutely am with Ijoma on the fact that culture fits. I think it's time for us to rethink it as professionals. And
Mm-hmm.
I believe strongly it is time not just to rethink it, to make that mental shift.
Yeah.
The world has really changed in the way we handle people and
Yeah.
employee experiences, and it will be a misnormal for us to continue to insist on culture fit. Like it doesn't even culture fit itself doesn't fit into what we're currently doing in people and culture. It
True.
doesn't.
Hmm.
It doesn't. So yeah,
Okay.
I'm so it's not a sub at me. I'm with her on it, and it's funny that we are talking about this now because a couple of weeks ago I did talk about it on my LinkedIn page.
Thank you.
So
So we'll
basically,
jump into
just like you're saying, people throw away all that, all your qualities, all the things that make you who you are, and then just come and look like us.
Yeah.
It doesn't work
Yeah.
that way.
It's almost you're saying no thinking required. We just need your
Exactly.
technical
yeah.
capabilities. We don't need, and that goes against the whole concept of employee experience and people experience,
True.
right? And the whole shift from human resources to people and culture is
Mhm.
essentially to understand that people are individuals. So when you hire a candidate, you're not just hiring their technical capabilities, you're hiring them
Yeah.
Mhm.
As
in
an
their
asset. Yeah.
full sense. So you're hiring the emotional strength, you're hiring the
Mhm.
mental strength, you're hiring their
Yeah.
character, you're hiring every part of them.
Yeah.
And you need to, as an organization, relate with them as full people. So You're not just hiring them just for their technical capabilities. So when you put in the whole cultural fit thing, you're saying to them, I want your technical capability. I want this one, but you see this part of you or this values or this culture. I don't want that. Can you sort of pack it somewhere when you come to work and do this for us? And then, and to your point, Ijoma, culture can be learned. And that was one of the things I said in my article. Culture can be learned. I'm an immigrant. We're all immigrants in the different countries where we
Mhm.
live, and we have learned and adapted to
Yeah.
where we live. So, if there is something that needs to be unlearned and relearned when someone joins an organization, there's always an opportunity to for that to happen. And
Yeah.
that's why the critical skill that should be checked or that we should be looking out for when we are going through the recruitment process is actually adaptability and
Adaptability.
willingness to
To
learn.
learn.
Because once that willingness to,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and the moment you find someone who is willing to learn and who is adaptable, every other thing fits.
Mm.
Yeah,
Every
That's
great. I've so from Ijeoma, I've heard about shared value from you. We've talked about strategic objective, the
Mhm.
values, yeah, and modeling attitudes that we want, right? We've talked about strategic leadership also. Question I will ask you is, how does leadership contribute to shaping this culture? I know you mentioned it slightly, but I want us to go into it
Yeah.
a bit much more. How does strategic leadership contribute to shaping this kind of corporate culture that we want?
Okay. Just like I mentioned, first of all, it is the leader's responsibility to set the tone. So, what do you want us to do? How do you want us to behave? You set the tone. You don't necessarily just have to say it. When you set the tone, you say it and then you behave it. So you are modeling it. You are showing people this is what the organization should look like. Now, learn from my example. Also, the leader also, has the responsibility of defining and aligning values. So it's not just enough to write out those things on the wall. What do they mean? Because sometimes we write out those values, they're so vague. We don't understand. You say teamwork. Okay. So how do we get there? So you define them and then align them to you align these values. You are saying this is how we are going to get there. This is these are the policies we're going to put in place. These are the processes. These are the trainings. These are the reward systems in place to take us to this destination. And then you now design, you create an environment. So you are saying, I'm putting everything in place for you. This is going to help you. So if you need training, you're going to get training so that's where learning comes in because some things you can't just get there without learning. So you are making provision. You can't say you have to do you set a task for someone and then there's no provision for the person to know how to get there. So you put in place the trainings, just create an environment to make it possible to attain those values that you have set out. And then another important, and I think it's a very critical part role that leadership has to play is to hold, we call it holding the line. Now, an organization would say, this is a, okay, let's say, for instance, the organization upholds honesty. That is a key value, one of the key values of the organization, honesty. And you want, regardless of the situation, everyone has to, uphold this value. But then there's this employee who is a high performer, very productive, but he goes about it in a dishonest way. He's bringing in the money, he's doing everything right, except he's not being honest. Now, as a leader, you'd have to be able to hold up the line and say, even though you are bringing us money, you have to go because you are not upholding the culture of the organization. So sometimes leaders have to take those kind of hard decisions so that everyone knows that although we also like the fact that the money is coming in, we also stick to our values. I think with these roles that the leaders play would actually help in shaping organizational culture.
Because
so I hear you say holding people accountable.
Yeah.
It's very, very important.
Yes.
So it's not just
Only, only Yeah.
go ahead.
Only if you have held yourself, if you are also accountable.
yeah,
Yeah,
Because you
I was
don't
just going to say that. Yeah, it's not just enough for you to model it, it's
yeah,
also for you to hold everyone,
yeah,
regardless of their productivity level, accountable to the same ethical
yeah.
standards. And I also think that another way leaders can do that is also, yes, consequence matrix, but also you get what you reward.
Yeah.
Rewarding positive reinforcement when you
Yes.
measure maybe through your performance management process, when you
Mhm.
focus a bit more on values and you weight it appropriately and you reward that,
Accordingly.
you are reinforcing those values and you're encouraging people to act in that ethical manner. So
Mm.
yeah, I would say maybe that's the third thing that leaders can do. Ijoma has mentioned the first thing, which is leave the values. The
Yeah.
second thing she talked about is hold people accountable regardless of their productivity levels. And I would just say the third thing I think we could add is reward positive reinforcement. So someone does something great, let it reflect in their performance management process. And it could be in any way, it could be a sport award, it can be recognition, it can be anything that you want to reflect. But let the organization know that leaving the value counts for something that
Yeah.
will
Mhm.
be rewarded.
Yeah.
There's something that just came to mind. So I volunteer with a company called Cardware, and where we have a lot of
Okay.
young talents that we bring through a talent accelerator program. And one of the values there is experimenting. We do collaboration, but experimenting. And we encourage people fail, but
Mhm.
attempt something. Let's say that if it doesn't work, we'll keep trying it. We'll keep tweaking things until we get what we want, but you must experiment. And that's what we look for. I've seen some other organizations that, like, I can't remember, one or two other organizations where they reward people for even failing, meaning that you have tried, because the more
Yeah,
you
I think Amazon has a whole department. I
I
read it
get you.
somewhere. Amazon has a whole department
Yeah,
dedicating to experimenting.
yeah,
Mhm.
and I think Steve Bartlett also in one of his organizations, they just fund, keep trying, and when you fail, say, okay, we've learned it, now know what to do better, and that's what we do. Imagine an organization where you fail, someone fails, and somebody turns out like something wrong with you, so that there's consequence for
Mm.
failing. No matter how much it's a value written on your wall, people know that if I fail, but yes, they've encouraged me to fail, but
Yeah.
if I break something,
Really do.
if I actually do it, I will have negative consequences on me.
Yeah.
So it's like, as you say, preach and do it, and as you
Yeah.
keep on encouraging people will fall in line with that. Okay, great. So from here, what do you think that companies get wrong with culture? Because one, we've talked about, we've talked about from the point of interviewing and say you want to do cultural fit. We've
Mm.
now got to the point of saying, okay, this is what we said should be in it, but this is what do you think companies get wrong? A lot of companies do not understand, or they just take culture with levity. Let's just go with the flow and just see where we get to.
Well, sometimes,
Or it could also be that it's been diluted because we bring people from outside.
not necessarily, not really necessary. But then I think that the problem is, would I call them the misconception of culture? Because we have a whole lot of things that people say about culture which aren't actually true.
True.
Okay, for instance, organizations think that culture is a campaign. So campaigning culture, we have and most times when I read some job adverts, when people start to campaign so hard about their organization, I actually go to their website and then look, or sometimes I go to Glassdoor and then look at what people are saying about
Actually
the
saying,
organizations. When there's so much campaign about our organizational culture, you'd find out that it's not always true. When you treat culture as a campaign and not a habit, then already you are getting it wrong. It's not something you use to entice people. That's where most organizations, they feel when you shout work-life balance, then you have people trooping in. And in reality, there's no work-life balance. You're just trying to get in the crowd. So
Or we are
culture,
like a family in this
or we are
organization.
like a family.
Like I don't want to hear that.
So actually, these values, these things we put on the poster, they're not just campaigns. Align with them, do them, let people actually see the testimonials of these things. That's when you're actually getting it right. It's not a campaign. It should actually be a habit. Habits are difficult to break.
mm,
So once it becomes a part of you, you can't just shake it off. People see it. You don't even need to advertise it. They
mm.
see it. So
Okay.
I think that's really where companies get it. They miss it.
So just yes or no. Can culture be measured?
Yes, culture can be measured.
Okay. Is hybrid working killing culture?
Hmm.
No,
Okay. Is remote working killing culture?
no.
Okay, great. Should culture should culture fit be a hiring priority?
No, never.
Okay, great.
Are these fire questions or what?
Yes, they are just a yes or no.
Yes.
I don't want them to be. They are not in between questions, because there's a session that myself and Uchechi were in, and I don't know if we conclude on that session. Uchechi talked about someone being a culture architect. Let me not lie.
Yeah.
There's every day within the HR space, there's one niche, while HR is still trying to understand themselves like teenagers.
Someone
They
throws
didn't say, you know
something
what,
else.
okay, you take this, go and practice it. What is a culture architect? Right? What's the culture architect? Uchechi, can you explain to us what's the culture architect?
No, it's just simple. What do architects do?
Basically,
They build,
design.
The design.
design. Yeah. They design and sort of try to bring their design to life. They might not be the ones building it. So a culture architect usually is external to the organization. The person comes in, person gives you a lens for you to actually see what your culture is. Because I think, to Ijeoma's point, where there are people that say, oh, this is what our culture is, they've lost touch with the reality of what's actually going on in the organization. Maybe because of power distance, they don't have the real time feedback of what their culture is. And I mean, and then when I say power distance, there's so many levels to it. It could be power distance as we know it to be. It could also be physical distance from the organization. To your point about maybe hybrid or remote, maybe you have management staff that are probably working in a different location from another location, or maybe they're working even in the same location, but their offices are, maybe you have executive floor, for instance, and nobody goes to the executive floor really, except when the executive staff come out and do a walk around, and stuff like that. Those things create a barrier, they create a space. I think it was Simon Sinek, I can't remember, in one of his books, that talked about why management staff should sit in proximity with their employees, because then you can know real time and they can feel your presence. So the culture architect will come in with that lens of, okay, let's even see what's going on in your culture. Um, they usually will start maybe with a survey without guiding people. We recently did one, and one of the things that stood out was, like, the architects didn't come to say what are your culture, what's your company culture. No, they didn't say that. They had about, hmm, maybe, to be modest, 100 to 150 words, and they asked employees to sort of pick out which of these words best represents the culture from your lens,
Yeah.
and then analyzing that result to say, they now tell the management, like, this is actually what, forget what you have on your website, this
This
is
is
actually what
really
your
what
employees
exactly.
think that the culture is. And then that now gives the management the opportunity to say, oh, okay, yes, that's the culture we want, or no, that's not what we want, this is actually what we want. And then you can now start talking about the journey of how to get from where you are to where you want to be, and all of that. So that's essentially what culture architects do. They come in from an external perspective, they look into your organization, they beam the lens on what is actually happening, and sort of bring it to fall. And then you, as the management team or as the organization, can then decide how you want to go. Sometimes the work of a culture architect even causes a revamping of the culture. So let's say, for instance, you've been pushing a culture of ABC, and then through the whole process, it shows that there is XYZ. You can step back an organization and say, actually, I like the XYZ.
Yeah.
I think that's what we should, continue to reinforce. And then maybe then you build processes that reinforce that. So, I mean, it's a big deal. It is a big deal, because if we want to talk about culture, so think of them as auditors.
Yeah.
Think of them as auditors.
Which is based on something you said now. I want to ask you this question back. Is hybrid?
Ijoma is the guest, not
Yeah,
me.
yeah, no. You said something. I want to. Is hybrid culture killing? Is hybrid working killing culture? Yes or no?
I won't.
Yes or no?
It's not. So it's not a
No,
yes or no
yes or no.
answer.
Yes or no? I did that to her. Yes or no?
No, I can't say yes or
Yes
no
or no?
because
No, but
that's not
I held that to account on yes or no. I put it to
because
I held and I'm doing the same thing to yes or no.
that will be misinforming our
No, no.
listener.
Yes or no. Then I'll give you an opportunity to explain. Then I'll give you an opportunity to explain later. But yes or no, is it? Is hybrid working killing culture?
Slightly,
Why?
slightly, in my
Why?
opinion.
See, let me tell you why I asked the question. Because there is something that IJ has said which is fundamental, right? The way you set your culture, people, right from day one, whether they are working in the office or not, they will hold themselves accountable to it. Will people do anyhow they want to do sometimes? Yeah. It's just like saying if we have branches in Uganda, in Kenya, Mafoluku, in Lagos, or in Chile, because they are all far apart, the only 10-man team, that means they might not uphold our culture. If that is the idea, then there is a strategic work that still needs to be done way back. Because
Not necessarily. Not necessarily, Udoka. And that's why
yeah,
I said slightly.
okay,
How do I put this? When you talk about culture
okay.
and the effect of maybe hybrid and remote, especially now that we are advocating for culture ad and all of that, there is something
Culture what?
about
What do you call it? Culture what?
ad.
Ad.
And
Yeah.
I've never heard of.
so
Culture ad and not culture fit. So
Oh, okay.
there is something about proximity to the right behavior, right? There's something about, I mean, that's why I said slightly. The impact might not be heavy, but there is a slight impact because the concept of proximity to a culture, I'll give you an instance. I can raise my children to the best of my ability and instill what I want to instill, and they leave home and they're still part of the family, and I expect them to live in that culture. But as they leave home and interact with me from an outside perspective or from a different location, there is a tendency that a few things can slip in that are not originally what the culture of the family, or in this case, the culture of the organization. Right? So and that's why I said slightly. If you want to maintain the same level of culture across board, there is the work. So if the work is much more for someone that has a hybrid and remote workers opposed to someone that has all in person. The in person one will not have to do as much as the remote, as
True.
if you get what I mean.
True.
The work is a lot more, and if it's not properly done, and if that distinction is not made in the process and the strategy of ensuring that that culture is cascaded, it's easy to miss it, and it's easy for people to now do different things. So
Okay.
I use the word slightly simply because it depends on how the organization structures their culture strategy, how they choose to onboard people into their way of life as an organization is absolutely important. The way you do it for in person is not the same way you would do it for hybrid and remote. Absolutely not. And if you use that same strategy already, you're going to have a problem. So yes,
So you answer the question in two different ways. Is it?
that's why I said it's not a yes or no.
It's all about strategy. It's all
Yeah,
about, from what you said now. It's all about strategy. So if we are, remember, you also said that culture is evolving,
yeah.
right?
yeah,
It's getting better over time. So if we are now doing remote working or hybrid, there's much more work to be done. So it's a strategy. So is remote working or hybrid supposed to be killing culture? If you say yes, then you are saying that our new strategy is not aligning with it. But you know what? I digress. Let's go back to IJ.
yes,
Okay,
please.
concerning this particular question, is hybrid work killing culture? I remember I answered no. It's a fact that the face of work is changing rapidly, but I still say no because culture. We have agreed that culture is dynamic, so
Mm-hmm.
this will just require a shift. Hybrid work is forcing companies to shift and be more intentional and structural when it comes to making connection with their remote and hybrid workers.
Yeah.
So, just like Uchechi said, the way they're going to approach face to face in-house employees and the
Onboarding.
way they will approach, it's going to be obviously different. So they're going to be more structural, more intentional about how they would connect with hybrid workers. But this is also where the hiring process, the onboarding process will come into play because the
Yeah.
storytelling, all these things have to be worked on. It's really going to be different from what they would do with in-house staff.
Absolutely.
It's really it's taking some work, but I don't think it kills culture.
Yeah, because the problem actually is that a lot of the problem I see is this is how we do it here. And
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
and and I'm saying that respectfully because I acknowledge that there should be processes and there
Yeah.
should be policies.
Hmm.
And an organization that doesn't have that's a recipe for disaster, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
So I acknowledge that in fact people call us the corporate cop in the organization in an organization, right?
Yeah.
So yes, I agree. We should uphold it.
Yeah.
But we should also know when something has stopped working.
True.
We should also know when something should change. A lot of people in, say, our sector or our field are still fighting remote and hybrid working.
That's true.
We're still fighting it. We're insisting everybody should come back into the office.
Exactly.
And for good reasons, for very good
Agree.
reasons, abuse and all of that. Yes, for good reasons. However, the reality of the world that we live in right now is that remote work or hybrid work will never be eradicated ever again.
Yeah.
It
True.
will never be. And so maybe it's also my personal adaptation to risk. I do think that when you see something that obviously is the future, there is no point fighting it.
Yeah.
What you should be doing is aligning as quickly as possible because that's what sets you apart. There's
I
so
remember
many.
seeing this on the AI.
Exactly. And it's the same thinking. It's the same thinking with AI, with everything.
Yeah.
Because we spend a lot of time investing time fighting systems that cannot be fought. A battle that we have no business fighting, a battle that we definitely will not win.
Mm.
And so I think it's a mentality thing. Like we need to do that, make that mental shift of this is within my control and I can control it too. This is outside of my control and I cannot control it, right? There are things that we should fight. I'll give you an instance. Some things that I think that maybe HR shouldn't agree to. For instance, there are some quarters that are advocating that so people and culture should include the health of employees. I don't agree with that. And that's because I don't have 100% control over
Yeah.
an employee's health status.
True.
Now, I can put medical benefits in place, I can put everything that the employee may need to have a healthy lifestyle. But I don't know what they do, what their lifestyle is outside of work.
Fine.
Yeah.
True.
So I will not be putting that responsibility on me. And
Mm.
so I will fight those kind of ideologies, right? But when it comes to certain ideologies like, oh, people are evolving, things are evolving, how do we adapt? You can't fight it. It's just like the war between the educators and AI. And sometimes when I look at that war, I sit back and I smile because it may take a while and it shouldn't. But the educators will come to realize that rather than fight this, how can we make this work?
Work
True.
for us.
Now, I'm not saying this, I'm not saying that maybe the concerns are not valid. They are valid. They are always valid concerns.
Yeah.
But the point is, you can't fight something that is progressing at the speed, at the kind of speed. You can't do that,
Yeah.
right?
True.
It's not sustainable. So rather than focus on this is how we do it here and this is how we onboard, how about there's one of the places I used to work many years ago had this mantra that stuck with me till today. And that's a question I ask myself always at work. How do I continuously improve my work?
Mhm.
Yeah. True.
Continuously improving the way we work. It's absolutely important as professionals. How are we doing this now? How can we do it better tomorrow? This issue of culture, the way that we are doing this culture, our culture strategy, is it time for us to rehearse it? Because now we have a global workforce. We have people living in different parts of the country. How do we get them to align with the way that we want them to act? How are their emails constructed? Should we have maybe like a simulated session that will help them mirror themselves? Do we break down what our culture is into actionable points so they
Yeah.
can relate? So yeah, but if but like break it down to actionable. So if you have, say, two departments in the organization, you say, what does this culture, what does this word or this value, what does it mean for a salesperson? How can I translate it in my work, regardless of where I am in the organization? That's what I should be thinking about. And that's what the strategy should move to. But when the strategy keeps on, oh, this is how we do it.
Like the question I will ask you is, can you give me 5 culture building habits? 5. Some people might have 10, 20, but just 5.
So 5 culture
So yeah,
building
yeah,
habits.
some culture building habits. Yeah.
Oh, but I think the first one should be communication. That's the first way you can, by any means, communicate. Tell people this is what we want to do. So communication, which would include consistent feedback. So it's a loop, keeps going round, never ending, always going. So you keep listening, you keep adjusting. So communication has to be very key. Secondly, you also recognize your values. So recognition to your values. Like I said before, don't just make them vague. Put something on your wall and people say, oh, we are hardworking people. And yet you see slackers everywhere. When you put a value there, then it has to be interpreted.
To
And
embed
just
it.
like
Yeah.
Uchechi said sometime earlier, tie reward to those values so that it makes it appealing to people. And then also let the decision making to getting all those culture, let it be let everyone have a say in it. Leadership should not just come and say, we want to do this and that, and everybody's looking at you and they're like, how doesn't even make sense, we don't even agree with it. Because the truth of the matter is that if the people you are leading don't buy into your culture, you are on your journey alone. They'll do their own thing and you do your own thing. So it has to be a mutual agreement. So get people's buy-in. And then sometimes you have subcultures even within the larger culture. It's also best practice to encourage those subcultures. Now, let me cite an instance. The organization has, I like to use a choir. Let me paint a picture with, let's say the choir is an organization.
Choir
And
in
then,
church.
yes, choir. Well, even a normal choir, really. Let's just look at it as a unit. Within the choir, you have sub teams. So you have alto, treble, the soprano, tenor. You have bass. So you have sub.
Things.
The best example I can give, because I'm picturing it as I'm saying. So within the choir now, those different groups, they also have their own culture. The larger team have a culture. But in these sub teams, there's also a culture. So we need to understand that each teams would have their own unique culture. Encourage it as long as it ties into the larger
Bigger
culture.
culture. Yeah.
Yes, because sometimes, for instance, there's some teams are very serious minded, and so you can come to the just like the choir again. If any of you sing, you will know that alto singers are the ones that give life to the choir. I say that because I'm one of them. I used to trouble a lot. But you find out that these people are very serious. Their own is to hit their notes, to sing their. These other people, they are hitting their notes, but they are giving, they are vibing,
This is a
enjoying
serious.
themselves.
Yeah.
They're doing the work and enjoying themselves. So there's a little bit of playfulness. Even encourage this
Yeah.
synergy, encourage this diversity. It also fits into making the place
Yeah.
more interesting to work in. Because if we have all serious people, it's really going to be frustrating for some people. For some people who don't like to be very serious all the time.
Yeah.
And then
We're on the same page. We're on the same page.
the fifth one would be regular team check-ins, because people want to know that even though you have set down the rules, the laws, they also want to know that you are concerned about how they are faring. So we are meeting a target, we are doing this, we're going by about it in this process, but how are you doing? How are you managing? Is the process up to your standard? Does it meet your standard? Do you want us to change anything? So regular team check-in to know whether those things are actually up to their liking. If not, culture is changing. We can make adjustments and then try again and just keep going until eventually we get to where we want to get to.
Just 2 more questions. 2.
Okay.
We've spent a lot of time talking about culture. For everyone
Okay.
that's just joining us, we have Ijeoma Anyanwu with us here. She's been dissecting culture across the workplace, and Uchechi has done a good work of streamlining it also in line with her own experience. I'm just your go-to guy, just asking questions here. So just this, what's your advice for new managers that are trying to lead from the middle, as concerns culture? How do they go about this?
New managers.
Yes.
I would
So
say,
they're not senior, they are not junior, they're just in the middle management.
okay, so I would say listen more, because the truth of the matter is that you tend to know more when you listen more. You can give all your orders, but it doesn't really, people might not hear. But when you listen, you actually know what people want. So lead with curiosity. Ask your team how do you define a healthy culture? How can we make what we have already better? And then build from there.
Finally, what's one thing you want leaders or anyone, what's one thing you want people to remember about culture in all we've said? What's one thing you want anybody to remember about culture?
So we started off by saying culture is a collection of values, beliefs, and all that. But the reality is culture is not the work that we do in work. Culture is the work. When we realize that culture is the work, then we will be more intentional about it. So if you shape it, then it will take the shape. It will shape you. But if you decide to allow it to, go on its own, it will probably take shape in a way that you would not want. So if you don't shape it, then it will shape itself and you might not like how it will turn out. So culture is the actual work. It is not the work we do in the work. It is the actual work. So we have to be intentional about shaping it.
Like I said, that.
And I hope people understand it. Yeah. I hope people understand it, because that's so powerful. Because we tend to see culture will happen in every organization, whether you're deliberate about it or not. So if you refuse to become deliberate about it, whatever, more or less, whatever you see, you take.
Anywhere it takes you to.
Because it will happen. It will happen.
So that means as you're growing, as you're scaling your business, you must
I
be
like that.
intentional
Very intentional
about how you've brought in people with different experience, people that are much more brilliant than you, because that's what they usually say. But then you tell them, what, this is how I want us to do. I want us to be friendly. I want us to do things this way. Yes, while you guys are doing your work, this is how we should work. Being that person that knows how to hold their hands and say, this is how we should build this organization with all your types of experience across board.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Any last words? Do you have anything to add?
Okay, so I think I was also saying that you look at culture like a tripod stand, a three-legged stool, something that has three legs. So where you have your values on one side, behavior, and then the system. The three of them have to always be, always work together. Because if you can imagine, if one of the legs is broken off, you can't sit on the stool and balance well. If you do, you might just fall off. So we have to be careful to make sure that our values, the behaviors, and the systems, they are all working in tandem.
I think Ijeoma just spot on with some of the analogies, and I like the analogies because it then gives you a mental picture of what we're talking about. But I'm a strong advocate of culture and being intentional with it and living it and holding people accountable. And because if you don't, to the last point that we just raised, it will take its own shape, and it will take the shape of every individual, every employee, or every person in the organization. So whatever the culture means to me that you have tolerated is what it's going to be. And before you know it, you see a lot of things all over the place that may not align with the brand that we're building. So being intentional with that is something I think that I would like us to think about more deeply as we wrap up.
Yep.
Thank you.
Great. Just before we go, there's something I've heard here. So today I've heard of culture architects, and I just thought about something which I've written down: talent developer. When you have architects, you should have developers, right? So you should have a talent developer, not just a culture architect, right? So that when you said that someone else does the developing, does that handwork within the organization, just tell him what to do and they do it. So thanks. I hope it's been a rewarding session for those of us who have listened in today. Our discussion today, what we've been looking at is we're looking at culture, company culture, how to build beliefs that stick. It's been an interesting session with Ijeoma. She's broken it down to us, told us about shared values, strategic objectives, how to model attitudes, and she's put it into that tripod where we talk about values, behavior, and systems, and it's been a very, very interesting discussion. IJ, if anyone wants to get across to you, how can they reach out to you? Are you on LinkedIn, social media?
Yeah, yes, I'm on LinkedIn's. Ijeoma Anyanwu, you find me there.
Very popular on social
Oh
media.
no, I'm just there.
Okay, you can reach out to her. You can reach out to her on LinkedIn. For this our session, please like, share, and listen again and again, and give us feedback. Your comments will really be appreciated as we continue to do what we do best. Thank you, and thank you for joining us again today.